Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with Part 5, The Miracles of Jesus, from The Mystical Christ by Manly P. Hall. The Rising of Lazarus. Chapter 5, The Miracles of Jesus. The scenes of Syria and the Therapeutae of North Africa healed the sick with simple and natural remedies, and also by exorcism and the reciting of verses from the Old Testament. Earlier, Pythagoras had treated disease by reading sections from the Odyssey of Homer. The Essenes had a secret book called Sefer Rephorioth, which some said had been compiled by Solomon. Other sects of the region included the Nazarites and the Ebionites, practiced the laying of hands and healing by prayer. This may account for the general lack of surprise or amazement over the miracles of Jesus. Even the Jewish priest attached to the Second Temple claimed the power to work miracles, and such wonders were comparatively regular occurrences. St. John 7:13, according to the Codex Sinaiticus, caused the people to ask, "When Christ cometh, will he do more miracles than these which this man doeth?" The implication was that at this period of his ministry, Jesus had not been identified with the promised Messiah. The descent of Christianity has been intimately associated with religious miracles. The power to produce such phenomena was not limited to the apostles, but has been associated with the lives of many pious theologians and mystics. Early church histories and pseudo-historical accounts of saints and martyrs are resplendent with wonderful happenings. Even today, evidence by miracles is usually required for beatification or the canonization of a saint in the Roman Catholic Church, except in cases of martyrdom. In the course of centuries, miraculous power has come to be associated mostly with works of healing in the Christian communion. Since the Reformation, the Protestants' descent of the faith has generally disregarded the older practice of healing the sick by divine grace, but occasionally it reoccurs in programs of evangelism. The rising conflict between theology and science further reduced popular interest and public faith in the efficacy of spiritual therapy. Freedom of religious conviction has resulted in no conviction at all on this important subject. From the advent of the scientific method in the 17th century to the unfolding of the concept of psychology in the closing years of the 19th century, the miracle was considered little better than a pious fraud. Like many of the extreme attitudes which flourished in this era of intellectual skepticism, the prejudice against spiritual phenomena must be re-examined in the light of larger knowledge. There is nearly always some element of truth in a belief which has survived the vicissitudes of social and cultural change. Reports of miracles, sustained by the testimony of honorable witnesses, have descended from remote times and are to be found in all religious beliefs and on all levels of human development. It does not seem reasonable that such accounts are completely without substance. Even though imposture may have been practiced in some cases, this does not justify unqualified condemnation. If the miracle originates in the concept of divine intersection, the opponents of the doctrine can advance only their own concept that such intersection is impossible. The resultant controversy reveals prejudice, but does not increase knowledge. Gibbon, in his Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, writes, "The Christian Church, from the time of the apostles and their disciples, had claimed an uninterrupted succession of miraculous powers, the gift of tongues, of visions, and of prophecy, the power of expelling demons, of healing the sick, and of raising the dead." It has been said that the miracles of Christ had doctrinal import and evidential value. As doctrine, they witnessed and sustained the ministry, revealing the power of faith and the efficacy of prayer. Symbolically, these wondrous happenings shadowed prophetically the works of the Spirit and the victory of the human soul over ignorance, sin, and death. As evidence, the miracles strengthened the devotion of the disciples and followers and were regarded by them as proof that the Master was divinely overshadowed. The scientific concept of a universe ruled by immutable law made no provision for occurrences which seemed to conflict with or be exceptional to The regular processes of nature, what appeared to be miraculous, must have been an appearance rather than a fact. The Swiss physician and mystic Paracelsus defined a miracle as an effect, the cause of which was unknown, but which cause must inevitably be equal to the effect which it produces. By such reasoning, spiritual phenomena originate in the unexplored parts of the universe, which, being beyond human knowledge, cannot be estimated, and which appear to be exceptional. Other types of incredible occurrences must be explained as delusions arising through faulty estimation of circumstances. Sincerity is quite possible, and the integrity of the witness is not challenged. It is the human judgment that is at fault. A new dimension was bestowed by the researchers of the pioneer psychologist. These demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt the power of the human mind over both body and environment. The internal life of the individual was accepted as the true cause of his external state. Psychoanalysis and psychotherapy lifted the causes of phenomena to the mental plane. The intensity of the mental emotional focus was recognized as the proper cause of dispositional peculiarities otherwise inexplicable. The approach to the human mystery was bitterly opposed by the exponents of science on the one hand and the defenders of religion on the other hand. The situation remained comparatively unchanged until the introduction of the psychosomatic theory. Through a series of clinical experiments, it has been demonstrated that the internal life of the individual profoundly influences his physical health. Negative or destructive thoughts and emotions disturb bodily functions, causing various types of disorders, related symbolically to their causes. This discovery has led to a rapid advancement in psychotherapeutic technique, especially in the field of therapy. These scientists, without realizing what they have done, have justified the biblical statement, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Nor is it difficult in the light of this thinking to explain why that which cometh out of the mouth defileth the man. Although the causes of human distress are now attributed to the fallacies of the untutored mind, the term mind, as it is used by advanced psychologists, is taking on implications previously associated with the terms soul and spirit. By a long and different route, the modern intellectualist is returning to the essential convictions which dominated ancient thinking. He is proving the past and sustaining the doctrines dear to his ancestors, but he gives the old truths new names, and thus escapes being stigmatized as a reactionary. Psychosomatics advocates the sane mind in the sound body. It affirms this compound to be the essential to the survival or normalcy. When we consider what constitutes actual sanity, we are immediately involved in philosophical speculations and mystical musings. A healthy internal life must be sustained by enduring values. Mental sickness is usually the result of a radical departure from hope, faith, and charity. The very abuses which religion has systematically opposed as are responsible for many infirmities of the flesh. That which strengthens the soul in right purpose relieves the body from stress and tension. The Ten Commandments, as given by Moses, and the further commandments bestowed by Jesus, and the recommendations contained in the Beatitudes, are not only good for the soul, but also necessary to the health of the body. Be kind, gentle, and tolerate religion, inspiring dedication to right principles, is as surely a system of therapy as any school of academic medicine. It would be conservative to say that at least half of all sickness is due to departure from the spirit of the golden rule. This is as surely a scientific fact as the law of gravity, and rather more vital. Materialism has reduced and restricted the application of the ethical and moral codes that human beings are sickened by their own conduct, convinced that they cannot be true to themselves without being economically and socially penalized. Otherwise, honorable persons compromise their convictions, fully aware that they are sacrificing health and happiness. As rapidly as new medications are compounded for the treatment of recognized ailments, new ailments appear. We are still trying to treat the disorders of the internal life by poultice, purging, and dosing the corporeal fabric. Even when the body is preserved, the soul remains sorely afflicted. The phenomenal increase of religious interest in the past 20 years bear witness to an instinctive recognition of spiritual requirements. Harassed and frustrated mentally and emotionally, and disturbed physically by the consequences of these intensities, the individual is searching in his own way and according to his own ability for internal peace. Those who have been able to accomplish a measure of such tranquility stand ready to testify to the beneficial results, not only as living more meaningful and the simple and natural pleasures of life more enjoyable, but the body reveals a new vitality and a greater resistance to the corrosive influences of environment. Many sects have arisen devoted to what may be termed religious therapy. These groups sometimes hold extreme attitudes, but in the main they prove the validity of their claims by giving a dynamic and persuasive impetus to constructive living and thinking. They have brought personality integration to thousands of their followers. We are inclined to justify our right to suffer. We have been grievously and sorely offended, and it seems perfectly natural to perpetuate a faithful account of the injustices which we have endured. We relive them daily, reveal them to our friends, and bestow them as a priceless heritage upon our descendants. We have been injured. Why then should we not feel pain? Tragedy has dogged our footsteps. Is not this noteworthy? When we see others who appear more fortunate, is not this a just cause for melancholia or even a trace of resentment? Without realizing the processes involved, we are first injured and then injure ourselves. But self-pity and self-censure create toxins which poison the faculties of the heart and the mind. As this zone of infection enlarges, it pollutes the sources of our physical vitality, hastening the natural courses of disease and depressing function. It is useless to evade the issue of living by justifying destructive habits and practices. We solve nothing in terms of body chemistry by proving that we have suffered or that another ill-starred mortal is to blame. We are punished not by what is done to us, but by our reaction to the injury. To forgive our enemies and to bless those who despitefully use us are sound therapeutic measures. When a physician prescribes a certain regime for the patient, he does so because faulty habits are endangering health. Far more important than the habits of the body are the policies of the mind. The doctor may sense this and recommend that the sufferer relax, enjoy himself, cultivate new interest, and practice optimism. Unfortunately, those in greatest need of such advice are least able to apply it. Can we relax and enjoy ourselves by merely deciding to do so, but with no capacity for happiness? Can we be optimistic when, as far as we are concerned, everything is desperately wrong? No one can turn off and on long-established habits by a simple and direct action of the will. He must inhabit them for a time, but, like malignancies of the flesh, they will return unless the cause is corrected. To be happier than we are requires that we should be better than we are and, perhaps at the moment, better than we have any desire to be. The physician has opportunity peculiar to his profession. Those who come to him are troubled, disturbed, and uncomfortable, and therefore most open to constructive suggestions. No one can endure suffering indefinitely without a growing determination to rid himself of the pain. If at this time he is told the facts, he is likely to be impressed. Even if the ailments are diagnosed as essentially physical, the organization of internal resources will contribute to a more rapid recovery and in extreme instances may determine survival. When we are invited to take stock of ourselves, we often find that we are deficient in spiritual overtones. We have drifted along depending completely upon external conditions for happiness and peace of mind. Neither our educational advantages nor our particular experiences have enriched us as persons. Our associations are of our own kind, or they would not satisfy our inclinations. We have developed skill and judgment in order to ensure financial survival, but we have made no provision for the day of personal adversity. We face life as we face death, with a melancholy hope. Mysticism can be a wonderful help to those not inclined to seek consolation in congregational worship and secular confusion. We frequently hear people say that they have worked out a philosophy of living that meets their needs, This usually means that they have adjusted in one way or another to the prevailing temper and are doing the best they can in a difficult situation, sustained by a few moral axioms partly practiced. They rest their case in the keeping of an understanding beyond their own. The dimensions of the concept are dim and the boundaries uncertain, but a little faith is certainly better than none. The enrichment of character by the cultivation of positive convictions prepares the way for a larger appreciation of the universal mystery. Even though we see only in part, it requires but a slight extension of vision to sustain the basic elements of an enduring faith. In religion, we grow by acceptance. But this does not mean that we are required to accept that which is essentially unreasonable. We have the right to acknowledge the existence of a supreme power of good, the immortality of the human soul, and the ultimate triumph of truth over evil. Each of these acceptances has implications which can be unfolded and applied to the personal problems of living. We cannot believe that this universe is the product of infinite wisdom and infinite love, and at the same time live in a state of rebellious disquietude. Each must struggle with his standard of values until light conquers darkness in his own heart. It is not necessary to debate the merits or demerits of countless incidents. Once we have experienced a certainty of values, all the lesser doubts are thereby resolved. We apply a positive attitude, whereas previously we were content to react negatively. As misery feeds from its own substance, so hope nourishes itself. By reversing our own psychic impulse, we change the entire course of our thinking, just as the mind of the maturing human being passes by imperceptible stages, from the concerns of childhood to those of adulthood. The inner self experiences an increase of values. It is the intention of nature that mankind shall grow, not only outwardly in terms of strength, but inwardly in terms of grace. Thus we fulfill destiny by self-improvement. The miracles of Jesus, whether explained theologically or psychologically, testify to the power of spirit over material limitation. The man of soul brings with him the doctrine of tranquility. Throughout the ministry, the Master taught a wonderful program of mental and emotional hygiene. His own example of complete dedication to the divine will and obedience to the divine law are sure guides to health from within. Sickness came to mankind because human beings broke the law, and to free themselves from their infirmities, they must keep the law. We hear much from exponents of natural health methods about obeying nature to ensure the extension of physical efficiency. We also learn about the laws of the spirit and how we may obey them in order to preserve the integrity of the person in the body. Beyond these simple requirements of daily function, the problem of health has a larger import, judging from the length of the prenatal epoch and that period required for the human being to attain maturity. The lifespan of man should be 4 to 5 times its present expectancy. Nature, which is the handmaiden of universal law, is a thrifty servant. She does not squander her resources and is always and everywhere watchful and provident. The human body could certainly function longer and more efficiently if it were not afflicted by negative pressures both from within itself and from its environment. It is a well-established fact that longevity is promoted by simple living and gracious acceptance of the world's burden. It is not work, but the friction caused by conflict that exhausts the vital resources. Worry, fear, hate, and inordinate ambition shorten life and condemn the closing years of human existence to decrepitude and misery. We often insist that we could be happy and well-adjusted if others did not interfere with those worthy inclinations. Actually, no one has the power to destroy in another peace of mind, love of truth, or strength of faith. It is a lack of these very qualities, or the incapacity to experience them, that makes us vulnerable. We claim to have lost that which we never possessed. Once the life is dedicated to principle, we transmute by the alchemy of love any destructive thought or action that is turned against us. It is true that if our faith were equal to a mustard seed, we could move a mountain, but remain immovable in our own conviction. The Greeks referred to the cathartic power of the internal illumination. Even as light cleanses and purifies by its very presence, so love purges the heart and mind of their impurities. It is useless to say that the quality of our mercy has been strained or that our good resolutions have been overtaxed. Light is inexhaustible, and it is our own mind and not the God in our hearts that convinced us that we have endured too much. Even on the defensive, we resent what we should accept and understand. The cultivation of the mystical attitude first relieves us of our neurotic tensions, and by doing so, ends much environmental conflict. We must always remember that certain things happen to us because of ourselves. When a life falls into a pattern of recurrent misfortune, it is because the chemistry of the personality attracts such ills by a sympathetic power. We can change our lives by changing ourselves, but if we simply attempt to alter the outer pattern of our living without changing ourselves, the new pattern will soon be the same as the old one. There can be no release from conditions while as persons we remain in the same condition. The first miracle of Jesus was the transforming of water into wine at the marriage feast in Cana. Water is the ancient symbol of purification, and wine an equally old and venerated symbol of illumination. Thus the man of soul has the power to transform the water of baptism into the wine of ecstasy. The wedding feast was a most appropriate occasion, for it represented a union of lives, even as the mystical experience is often described as a spiritual marriage. The Master set the example for his disciples when he cleansed the leopards, opened the eyes of the blind, cast out demons, transformed substances, controlled the elements, healed the sick, raised the dead, and finally accomplished his own resurrection and witnessed it before the disciples. All these wonderful and strange happenings testify to the available power of God operating through one consecrated to the service of truth. Jesus instructed his disciples to continue in his name and to do the works which he had revealed. He empowered them with his own powers from God and sanctified them with his love. So, likewise, the Christ in you can sanctify and empower if the man of body has hearkened to the call. Forsake your nets and follow me. The faith content in human nature may, under certain intensities, miraculously increase. It is not possible for all to have faith in the same degree or of the same quality of integrity. Faith to one is a dynamic force, to another merely a static acceptance. Sincerity and devotion determine, to a great measure, the availability of sufficient faith. Shrines of healing have always testified to the benefits of devout belief. The Greeks and Egyptians had deities of medicine, and their sanctuaries were adorned with gifts of gratitude from those who came and were healed. Christianity has no divinity set apart for special services. Jesus was the teacher, the shepherd, and the physician. The Christian mystic unites his worship into one quality of devotion and seeks the fulfillment of all things needful through the act of prayer. In this, he recognizes one source of strength and one fountain of good. He sincerely believes through an internal power of knowledge that by the dedication of his soul to the service of the Christ power, he is made new and whole in the Spirit. The miracle is not accomplished by the direct search for health, but by the experience of the inflow of the presence of God. We ask not that our aches and pains shall be taken from us, but that in our hearts we shall know that faith by which all perfect works are possible. There are many weaknesses, but only one strength. There are countless infirmities, but the fact of health is indivisible from the fact of truth. We cannot accomplish the lesser except through the greater. If we nourish the root of the tree, it will have many flowers and fruits. But if we attempt to perfect one of the fruits, the tree may perish. The cause of health is identical with the cause of peace and security, and one cannot be attained without the others. To the mystic, the experience of internal revolution is itself miraculous. It transcends the expectancies of the mind and emotions, even as physical phenomena of an unusual nature transcend the expectancies of the objective faculties. The miracle, when separated from a sound religious doctrine, can lead to unfortunate results. The human being naturally seeks to escape from the restriction of law and order. He resents being required by divine power or human authority to practice a code of ethics, which interferes with his own personal and selfish instincts. As an equation in living, the miraculous seems to offer a supernatural solution to situations, the full implications of which the mind wishes to evade. Why should we struggle so heroically for the improvement of character if the greater sinner can become the greater saint by mysterious means? In this argument, our thinking is historical rather than personal. The miracle has not occurred to us, but is told of others about whom we have only reports and accounts. We are inclined to assume that which we desire to assume, and by this process we are led astray. Devotion to principles can be estimated in terms of extensity or intensity. Some may labor quietly over a considerable period of time, thus accomplishing a desired end. Others can accomplish similar objectives more rapidly by the intensification of soul power. In either case, cause and effect remain equal in quality, but this may not be evident to the physical sense perceptions. The mystical experience occurs on a certain plane of consciousness and is available to those who attain to this level. The interior circumstances of this attainment cannot always be estimated rationally. They must be known intuitively. The department of living in which we seem to stand in most immediate need of divine help are those in which our own abilities appear inadequate. These include obscure health problems, incompatibilities of temperament, and collective economic pressures. In these situations, we like to feel ourselves victims of forces or patterns beyond our control. We turn to prayer, seeking to avail ourselves of the spiritual resources of the universe. Only the miracle can accomplish that which is otherwise impossible or improbable. With our human limitations, we see no reason why we should not petition divine assistance to restore violated integrities. Unfortunately, we are not so much concerned with facts as we are with immediate requirements. Thus, we have the phenomena of two nations at war with each other, both praying to the same God for the victory of their causes. When prayer is motivated by selfishness or unenlightened impulses, it is more than likely that the granting of our petition would result in loss or hardship to others. To grant by another's loss and to accomplish at another's expense cannot be regarded as honorable or worthy. The misuse of spiritual power is sorcery, and those who engage in such action will ultimately suffer as a result. We may implore divine aid. It is nobler to ask that our own eyes be opened than that others would see the errors of their ways. The mystic solves the world enigma by releasing the light in his own soul and allowing this light to do the works of God by the miracle of love. It has never seemed to me that we should require that the man of soul within us arbitrate the consequences of our human frailties. It is not God who should work for us, but we should work for God. Soul in bondage to the body is like the blinded Samson, bound to the millstone of the Philistines. We cannot deny the power of the Spirit over phenomenal happenings, but we can question the integrity of using this power selfishly. The one necessary miracle is the redemption of ourselves by the power of grace. This redemption is not measured in the correction of circumstances, but in the strength of the enlightened self over circumstance, elevated by a simple and honorable faith to union with the substance of the divine love. The mystic requires no consultation or evidence of the fact of grace. He is born again, out of darkness into light, out of doubt into certainty. This participation in the very substance of sovereign reality reorients completely the human perspective. The requirements of the man of soul are different from those of the man of body. What formerly appeared desirable or sufficient is no longer of paramount importance. Both the subject and object of prayer are internally altered. We know as a certainty of experience that what we give is more valuable than what we gain. We fulfill by releasing rather than possessing, and find happiness in the well-being of others rather than in the advancement of ourselves. To seek the path of mysticism in order to accomplish worldly ends is either to fail or to come to that threshold of decision in which our selfish purposes are renounced and rejected. Assuming for the moment that the mystical state has been attained, we find ourselves experiencing so complete an awareness of the rightness of things as they are, and the certainty of the victory of good over evil, that we are no longer inclined to ask or petition that things be changed. We know as a certainty of the Spirit that God is in his heavens and all is right with the world. We experience the repose of the soul. Many mystics have called themselves Quietists, thus defining the subject of their quest. Quietude of the spirit and from the spirit is the peace of God. This gentle serenity transmutes confusion and discord at their sources, and not after they have manifested their troubled works. Devout faith inspires complete acceptance, and in this way accomplishes quietude. Action impelled by the consciousness of peace inevitably follows harmonious, rhythmic, and orderly patterns. When only gentleness and beauty flow from within the person, there is, indeed, balm in Gilead. This balm is for the healing of both natures and nations. What more perfect solution can be found for the effects of tension than the ceasing of tension itself? For example, tension manifests as intensity, and intensity is a pressure which impels to ill-considered activity. The more we act under the pressure of emergency, the more certainly we will act unwisely. This unwisdom, in turn, has consequences, and these take the form of discord, conflict, and errors of judgment. As these negative factors increase within us and extend about us through their effects, we become tired, nervous, worried, and perplexed. Even if such negative attitudes do not immediately cause sickness, they will do so in time by impoverishing the vitality sources of the body. If the majority of the peoples of the world are so afflicted from within themselves, we have the collective manifestations of these personal disquietudes. Racial and class hatreds and prejudices are intensified. Private irritations accumulate to become public animosities. The French criminologist Bertillon defined the criminal as a man who is sick. Individuals unhappy in themselves suffer from one of the most dangerous of all infectious and contagious diseases, lack of spirit anchor age. And a sufficient faith is responsible for the unhappy social system which weighs so heavily upon its citizens. Can we not say that personal insecurity is a perpetual emergency requiring immediate consideration? To the apostles, the greatest of all miracles of Jesus was his resurrection from the dead after 3 days in the tomb. Through his supreme manifestation of the power of God, the Master testified to the complete victory of spirit over matter. The mystic accepts the resurrection as the certain evidence of the victory of life within himself. As he follows in the footsteps of the Master, the pilgrimage does not end on Calvary, but on Mount Olive. Faith must accomplish the final fulfillment of itself before its testimony is consummated. The universal life principle is itself the source of processes more miraculous than the wonders associated with transcendental arts. We accept the miracles of nature, but find it hard to estimate the miracles of religion. Actually, generation is as difficult to explain as regeneration. We accept the outward growth of creatures as they unfold the potentials locked in the seed, the egg, and the womb. Why then does it appear remarkable that faculties and propensities of the human compound should also enlarge and come to the fullness of their own potentials? If plants grow towards the light of the sun, why should not souls grow towards the light of God, which is the source of their nutrition? Growth is not miraculous, but the results of it as manifested to our sense perceptions appear wonderful and extraordinary. Physical evolution is revealed through a gradual improvement of species, and spiritual evolution by the gradual refinement of the qualities and attributes of man's internal disposition. Both processes are motions towards perfection, and perfection is fulfillment. The miracles attributed to Jesus can be interpreted as testifying to growth. They were revelations of divine power moving from the invisible source of good through the human soul and into the mortal body or environment. Psychologists explain demonism as an obsession or possession of the mind by neurotic or psychotic areas of the subconscious. In simpler terms, we allow habitual attitudes to be so strengthened by repetition and revitalization that they finally gain control over the mind or emotions and possess us. Faith casts out demons by cleansing the consciousness of those destructive impulses, which strengthen psychotic patterns. The dedication of the soul to works of light removes dangerous habits by a process of re-elevation. What we cease to accept, we can no longer support. Jesus cleansed the leopards as an evidence of his ministry. We are not certain from the reference in Leviticus 13:14 that the disease so referred to was the same as that now recognized. It seemed to mean any serious sickness accompanied by progressive ulcerations on the surface of the body, usually causing deformities and disturbances of sensation. Victims of such ailments were called unclean and were sentenced to a living death as social outcasts. Symbolically, those corrupted and diseased by their own vices and intemperances are the living dead. In the end, the internal wickedness corrupts the flesh and deforms the nature, destroying its sensitivity to all that is noble and beautiful. The ancients believed that disease was caused by sin, and the sovereign remedy was virtue. Among the labors of Hercules was the cleansing of the stables of Augeas, which has the same meaning as the Greek myth of the solar deity. Light performs all the wonders, and light itself is but the outer form of life. The healing miracles may be interpreted mystically or literally. Here again, the lesser is fulfilled by the greater, and that which is experienced in secret is revealed openly. The blessings which accompany the conversion of the soul to ways of truth are imparted to the body as the universal medicine described by the Hermetic philosophers. We are punished for wrongdoing by being imprisoned within the effects of our own actions. The corporeal part of man is the receptacle of consequences and must bear witness to that by which it is contaminated. It may not be agreeable to contemplate that our actions produce inevitable reactions, but we must accept the fact as a larger good than we choose to appreciate. Until we are resolved to correct causes, we have no right to be offended or displeased because of our afflictions. Illumination is a growth apart from time and is measured in terms of dedication. We do not gain in virtue by simply enduring our infirmities with stoic composure. We are here to learn all lessons, but to accept only the fact of God's love. The miracle of the rising of Lazarus has long been held to have special significance. Apparently the name, in an abbreviated form of the Old Hebrew, Eliezer, which means God's help. Several persons of this name are mentioned in the Old Testament and include the third son of Aaron. This Eliezer later was invested with the sacred garments on Mount Horeb and succeeded Aaron in the office of high priest. The introduction of the name Lazarus into the parable of the beggar and the rich man, Luke 16:19-31, is most curious. It seems to be related in some way to the story of Lazarus of Bethany, but the accounts conflict. It is also strange that so important a miracle as the rising of the brother of Martha and Mary after he had lain 4 days in the grave should be recorded only in the Gospel of St. John. The other evangelists omit all mention of this wonderful occurrence. It has been suggested that St. John prepared his account after the other evangelist had died. Possibly he waited until the persons involved had departed from this life and therefore could not be persecuted or embarrassed. There is a mystical tradition that the rising of Lazarus describes symbolically the establishment of a secret sect or school within the Christian communion. The religious mysteries of antiquity included in certain of their rituals a scene in which the candidate for initiation passed through a mystical death and resurrection. This ceremony implied a departure from worldliness and a rebirth in light and truth. The same thought is conveyed by the words of Jesus, "Except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God." St. John 3:30. In the 6th verse, the Master amplifies his original statement. That which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of spirit is spirit. In Egypt and Greece, those mystics who passed through the experience of the second birth were called the twice born, and were regarded with spiritual veneration. Birth into the physical world results in a limitation of internal consciousness. When the eyes of the body are open, the sight of the soul is obscured. Living unfolds on the plane of form until the person becomes so immersed in material concerns that he is unable to maintain the clarity of internal vision. By the mystical experience, he is released from the powers of mortality. He is reborn in the light and can know again the kingdom of heaven. Lazarus has come to be recognized as the embodiment of this process. The spirit of man does not die within the body, but sleeps until it is released by the experience of the mystical resurrection. It is known that Jesus instructed his disciples in many matters not revealed to the multitudes. Early Christian writers enlarged upon this theme. but without arriving at generally acceptable conclusions. The miraculous draught of fishes is described in St. Luke 5:2-9. This has been interpreted as foreshadowing the future power of the Christian ministry. Simon Peter was to become the great fisherman, the fisher of men. It was the work of the apostles to cast their nets into the sea of life and to draw forth food from the deep. The first symbol of the Christians was the fish, and during the persecutions in Rome, they recognized each other by drawing the shape of a fish on the ground with their staves. The miracle of supply, with its overtones and implications, certainly referred to the food of the Spirit. Those who have perfect faith say in their hearts, with Simon, "At thy word I will let down the net." There is ample evidence that those who accept the way of the inner life are wonderfully preserved and protected by their own integrity. In practical daily living, we often labor long and sincerely, yet the ends we seek are not accomplished. We struggle on, becoming more desperate and troubled as our efforts fail. At last, discouraged, we abandon the project, only to find as we renounce the intention it is fulfilled. Experience teaches us that we lose much by trying too hard and by allowing personal pressures and intensities to interfere with the natural workings of divine law. Before the good things we seek can come to us, we must increase in love, wisdom, peace, and faith. The goodness in our hearts draws to us that which is needful. We must become more thoughtful about our inner lives if we would attain honorable success in our temporal careers. Here again, the great miracle is the power of the Spirit. The opening of the eyes of the blind is an obvious allusion to spiritual apperception. There are none so blind as those who will not see. The sight of the eyes is perfected by the light in the heart and mind. Those who see only the outer forms of things and have no vision of the life processes within and behind bodies have failed to use properly the faculties with which they have been endowed. We never see clearly until sight supports understanding and the internal faculties transmute the findings and reports of the exterior perceptions. While it may be true that the physical eyes cannot behold the universal mystery, they do make available substantial evidence of the workings of God. This evidence, when honestly and faithfully reported to a mind gently receptive to spiritual values, strengthens faith, deepens understanding, and inspires courage and dedication. When the man of soul within us becomes the master of our purposes, we instinctively observe and comprehend that which is concealed from those less enlightened. When we ask a man if he understands us, we may say to him, "Do you see the meaning?" We imply sight by the reason or by the emotional attributes of consciousness. Thus, to see is really to comprehend, to recognize, or to know the essential substance of ideas. In Matthew 17:24-27, it's described the miracle of the coin in the fish's mouth. At Capernaum, those who collected tribute money came to Paul asking if Jesus paid tribute. The master then told the disciple to go to the sea, cast the hook, and he would find a piece of money in the mouth of the first fish that was taken. This money was then to be given as tribute. This is one of the several instances in which Jesus set the example of rendering unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. Mystics have interpreted these actions as admonitions to obey the established laws of nations and times. Religion does not justify or require that the believer should set an example which may contribute to the delinquencies of others. Internal growth does not confer freedom from law, but freedom within law. The Master taught that the progress of human institutions is not achieved by overthrowing the past, but by outgrowing the past. Faith is not violent, but it is inevitable in its workings. It changes all things, but does not burden society with revolutions and insurrections. As we improve, we naturally turn away from the lesser and embrace the greater. We often do this by a simple and gentle act of interpretation. We find new and richer meaning from old customs and procedures, and by living these new meanings, we redeem the laws as we perfect ourselves. The fish was the symbol of spiritual supply, and later become the peculiar monogram of Christ. It lived in the ocean or sea of God, the depths of which no man has explored. The creature which inhabited water lived in the element of purification. The coin in his mouth was the abundance which is available from the Spirit. The abundance takes any necessary form. When tribute is demanded, it is available if the inner man is established in godliness. Matthew 12:10-13 combines a miracle with a traditional observation. A man with a withered hand came to Jesus on the Sabbath to be healed. The Pharisees asked the Master if it was lawful to perform the act of healing upon the Sabbath day. Jesus answered by questioning them, concluding that it was lawful to do a good deed on any day. He then healed the withered hand and departed because the Pharisees had counsel against him. In ancient religions, the hand was regarded as the instrument of the will and the purpose. That which is conceived in the mind or the heart is manifested through the works of the hand. Ultimately, the hand became the symbol of civilization itself, which is the monument to the labor and industry of mankind. The withered hand, like the barren tree, fails of usefulness. The man of soul extends his power to his parts and members, dedicating them to his service. We remember the words, "If I forgot, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning." If we fail truth, our right hand has already lost its cunning, but its skill is restored if we restore truth in our hearts. Bema applied the term Sabbath to the great peace in the soul of one who has experienced the mystical Christ. In 6 days we labor, and by this labor is meant the works of growth. We struggle through the mystical equivalent of the 6 creative processes. All profitable labor is growth towards truth by the unfoldment of character. If we have worked well and have been good and faithful servants through the college of the 6 days' work, we come on the 7th day to the peace of God. We rest in the Spirit, not because we seek idleness or leisure, but because in quietude we are called to a larger endeavor. The mystical experience is the Sabbath in which we set aside the time of God. All the miracles are inculcated in the feeding of the multitude. Jesus divided 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes, feeding more than 5,000 persons and having left thereafter 12 baskets full of fragments. Matthew 14:15-21. The bread is the food of the earth, and the fishes, the spiritual nutrition from the sea of space. Here is the promise that the experience of truth shall, indeed, be the source of infinite supply. All the miracles of the Spirit are works of supply. From within ourselves come the healing, nourishing, protecting, and providing power. When we know this with a complete and sufficient faith, we are established in righteousness. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.